Chapter 7. Can Fasting Kill? To take up every misconception in the public mind about fasting would require a special volume, but certain fallacies ought to be examined and cleared away. The most important of these is the erroneous statement that fasting can kill. Let us be very clear on one basic fact. To fast is not to starve. To starve is to abstain from food beyond the period when the fast must end. When the individual has reached a point at which weakness rather than strength sets in or gives indications of setting in, Since the fast should and indeed must be conducted under expert professional direction, the director orders the fast broken before it ceases to be fasting and becomes starvation instead. Can starvation kill if abstention from eating continues deep into the second or starvation stage of abstention? It can, and in some cases it has, where common sense has been deliberately ignored. Mrs. Gloria Lee Bird, author of 2 books on outer space, died at the age of 37 as a result of prolonged abstinence from food. She abstained from eating for 66 days. She had been instructed to fast for peace. She said by, quote, J.W., unquote, a ruler of outer space, who had called her from Jupiter. She was to continue her fast until J.W. sent what Mrs. Bird described as a light elevator to Earth to take her to Jupiter. It is not certain that she totally abstained from food for the whole of the 66 days. Physicians in Washington, D.C. hospital, where she died, expressed the opinion that she had taken juice as part of the time, but had been on a complete fast during the last month of her life. Here again we have an example of the misuse of terms. The news account states that she starved herself for 66 days and then tells us that she was on a complete fast for at least 30 days of her period of abstinence. As her fast was voluntary, even though undertaken under the belief she had been instructed to do so by some being from outer space, she may be said to have fasted, in the true sense of this term, for a certain period without food, and to have begun to starve sometime in the latter part of this time. It may be that she died of starvation. It cannot be said that she died of fasting. As the published account of her death provides us with no details of her size, the state of her flesh, her rate of loss, her activities while abstaining from food, and other details that should be in our possession in order to determine how long she fasted and when she began to starve, we will hazard no guesses about these matters. I judge from her picture that she was a small woman. She does not seem to have been fat. She had been an airline hostess, and since in this profession women are commonly chosen above a certain height, we may assume that she was not a short woman. Perhaps 50 days would have been somewhere near her limit as a faster, but this would have also depended on her physical and emotional activities. Mrs. Bird became unconscious only 4 days before her death and did not regain consciousness. What was done to her in the way of treatment during these last 4 days in the hospital is not revealed. It is physiologically impossible to starve to death before the skeleton condition is reached, but death may occur at any time, fasting or eating from other causes. Fasting, as I have defined it in this book, does not cause death. Death from lack of food can occur only after total exhaustion of the body's food reserves. It does not immediately occur then, as it is still possible to maintain the functions of vitally essential organs by sacrificing the less essential organs. But death may result from an advanced condition of cancer or heart disease or Bright's disease or some other condition of this nature while the fast is in progress. In such cases, it is not correct to attribute the death to the fast. Those patients die without fasting, and it is reasonably certain that in most cases they would die sooner if eating. An example of a death falsely attributed to fasting is that of a 9-year-old boy in Albany, New York, in September 1932. The coroner called it death brought on by starvation. The news account did not state how long the boy had been without food, but it did state that he collapsed while attending school. Now, no boy that is near death from starvation attends school. In an actual state of starvation, the boy would have lacked the strength to walk. He would have been confined to bed for several days prior to death. The account also stated that the boy was seized with convulsions. Convulsions never complicate starvation. Such stories, while they tend to keep alive the myth that the sick must eat plenty of good nourishing food to keep up strength, are fallacies. When anyone dies while fasting, sensational newspapers are almost sure to herald the death as one due to starvation, without knowing the condition of the faster or actual details of the case. Such stories play up the starvation angle, and the general public is likely to get a distorted picture of fasting from such sources. What would be the result if some newspaper published the details of every death that occurs in a large city hospital of a whole year, giving the name of the physician in attendance, the type of hospital where the death occurred, the name of the hospital where the death occurred, the drugs or operations employed, and attributed each death to the drugs or the operation? Such procedure might not convince the public that drugging is a monster evil, but it would certainly cause consternation among physicians. There are certain to be some failures of fasting to achieve lasting recovery. This is especially true in those far advanced cases that have turned to fasting as a last resort. It cannot be claimed that fasting will enable every man, woman, and child, regardless of his condition and stage of the sickness, to recover good health. Its limitations are those of the body. Fasting is not a cure. Healing is a spontaneous biological process, and only such healing as the body is capable of doing can occur whether the patient feasts or fasts. Hopeless cases have already reached the stage of irreversibility, will not recover when, as an 11th hour measure, the patient turns to fasting for help. The danger most often is not, in fact, that the patient will be starved, but rather that he will be stuffed to death. Where a disease is terminal and there is no hope for recovery, it seems to me cruel to stuff the patient with overfeeding that can only increase the suffering of the dying.